Hello everyone, I'm Emmanuel, I'm a member of the PMDG tech team and a real-world Boeing 737 pilot, and I'm making this video for you of the PMDG 737-700 for Microsoft Flight Simulator. Do note that I'm recording this using a beta pre-release version, so do not expect everything to be 100% functional. There is stuff that's still going to be added, for example the trim wheel sound that I'm quite sure some of you are going to notice missing at the moment. Now this video is not intended as a tutorial. I'm simply going to show you this, to show you what this airplane can do when it's being flown by somebody flying this airplane every day, and to show you what the PMDG 737-700 for Microsoft Flight Simulator is capable of doing. So, this said, I'm not a professional streamer, I'm not even a professional YouTuber. In fact, this is my very first video that's probably going to have more than 100 clicks. So stay tuned and forgive me any non-video professional mistakes that I might make. Again, this is about the airplane, not about my skills or my views. So, let's hop into the flight deck and do this flight. So here we are in the flight deck of the Boeing 737-700 of Ryanair. In fact, the only 737-700 Ryanair has, which is an aircraft that was acquired from a different operator. In fact, that's the only current Ryanair airplane that's not been in the fleet since purchased from the factory. So don't worry if you see some stuff that doesn't look like every Ryanair airplane that you might have seen has it, because this airplane is a little bit special. Alright, so as said, I'm not going to do a lot of explaining, however I will do a little bit of the multi-crew experience and try to cut it down into what you can do single pilot in the flight simulator. So the aim of this video is just to show you the flight as a pilot would see it in his everyday life. The flight is from Düsseldorf to Nürnberg. We do have it down here in our sim toolkit. You can see the open flight plan Düsseldorf to Nürnberg, which is scheduled to take about 50 minutes, and I am flying this flight on VATSIM, where there is an event taking place on every Monday between Düsseldorf and Nürnberg. So, enough talking, let's get to do some work. In real life I am flying as a first officer, so bear with me for showing you this from the right hand seat. So we'll start loading up the airplane. We're scheduled to take around about 4,300 kilos of fuel. Quick look into the weather, showing us our destination has CAF OK, calm winds, and I've checked the no times before, there is nothing significant in it affecting our flights. Therefore, it is an online day on VATSIM, so let's just take a few minutes more, maybe 5 minutes for holding fuel or something. That's about 180 kilos, as you can see here in the flight plan. So rounding that up, we take 4,500 kilograms of fuel for this particular flight. For the payload, I've planned 130 passengers on this one, and there is really not a lot of luggage being transported on these flights, so 300 kilos of luggage will have to do. Bring us to 50 tons zero fuel weight, which is 300 kilos more than planned in the operational flight plan. Not a significant difference. The fuel burn caused by that is going to be minimal, therefore we can go like this. So we're just checking the oxygen here, making sure there's nothing wrong with the mask. Getting into the FMC here. Now, the airline I'm flying for is not using company routes, therefore the PMDG 737 has the capability. You can still use the same route format that you've used with the P3D or FSX versions of the add-on. However, since we do not have company routes in my airline in real life, I'm going to type the route manually. For the departure, looking at the ATIS, I'm going to use the text ATIS here to expedite things a little bit in order not to have to record the voice ATIS. So it's going to be a Kumik departure from runway 05 right, most likely. And we will then get the actual clearance later on from the controller when we call delivery. You can type airways in like this, however you do have to confirm on the flight plan that the waypoints in between match, because there are airways which have several intersections which can lead to incorrect waypoints popping up. Quickly checking on the other FMC where this arrival is ending, because we have the ATIS 2 Tango arrival, and that ends at Echo Romeo Lima, and there is a small specialty in Nürnberg. If you have the waypoint DUS in it, you have the DUS to 8 transition, which I'm selecting here. Now this is just stuff that you happen to bump into and that you happen to know when you're flying these routes frequently, so this is not knowledge that's expected from you at any point. Over here we are inserting a 220 knot restriction for better track keeping and the first stop altitude. That again is an SOP from the airline I'm working for and is not required by the basic Boeing procedure. And we do press activate, don't execute it yet because we will do the takeoff briefing in a few moments, and after the takeoff briefing we're going to execute the route. Looking at the transition altitude, small specialty, we're always adding 1 feet to that, because using VNAV to level off the airplane, otherwise it might level off at flight level 50 instead of altitude 5,000 feet, while with the transition altitude at 5,000 you still want to be at an altitude, should ATC clear you to that. Finally, on the fixed page, we're inserting the engine outset, which in this case is 60 ME straight ahead from Düsseldorf VOR, and then a left turn to Lima Mike Alpha NDB to pick up the hold over there. Finally, 250 knots below 100 in the descent, and for the forecast, I'm just inserting flight level 60 here already, so that since this is a short flight, as much is done on the ground as is possible. And the same goes for the descent winds that I'm about to enter in here as well. Cruise level is 230, so I'll just put 2 wind sets in over here. Right, and that's about it for the flight management system. Now, sorry for that view, just had to reset my zoom. Now looking at the overhead panel, going over here, turn on the yaw damper, turn on the fuel pumps. Again, something my airline does that not every airline does, turning on all the pumps on the ground already. Refueling is completed, so we can turn the seatbelt sign on. Cabin temperature, fairly warm, 33 degrees there, so we are going to start the APU in just a moment. However, for noise reasons, we don't want to start it too early either. A lot of airports don't like it when you run the APU for too long. We do have maintenance available here, so we're going to use the right igniter. If you don't have maintenance, you would use the left igniter only. For the altitude, we're turning in the first expected stop altitude plus 100 feet, just to serve as a reminder that we are not actually cleared to that altitude yet. For the courses, now I'm going to use Navigraph charts for this flight. They're provided by Japason, all rights reserved, and provided to the FlightSim community by Navigraph, which is a very kind service, and it doesn't cost you too much either. I can very much recommend going for either the Navigraph or the Aerosoft charts. Now for the departure, we're aiming to back it up conventionally as much as we can. So I'm going to set the first inbound here. The Kumik 4 Zulu departure is what we're going to fly. So 098 for the inbound to the VOR, 095 for the outbound, the other course selector. Again, excuse me for not talking too much. As said, my intention with this is not to provide you with instructions, even though I am from time to time explaining a little bit that I'm doing, especially when I know that not many flight simmers are aware that we're doing things this way in real life. Or where we might be doing things differently from what most flight simmers are used to see. Small tip here, since scrolling is pretty slow in Microsoft Flight Simulator in general, if you hold the mouse key to move the button and then scroll on it at the same time, you're achieving a pretty decent amount of speed, changing those frequencies. Microsoft Flight Simulator is the, well, not the first, but the second to implement the 8.33 kHz. So we are actually seeing this as a brand new feature now in the PMDG 737. If you from time to time see numbers going the wrong way when I'm trying to scroll, that's just due to my mouse. I just need to get a new one. Alright, so we have almost finished our setup. Once those VORs are set to what we need for our departure, then we are finished with the flight deck setup so far, and we can start with the briefing and basically all the multi-crew stuff that you've probably been waiting for on this video. do note, by the way, the small in-up sticker on the weather radar. That's because at the moment we're recording this, there is no weather data available for third-party developers in Microsoft Flight Simulator. Therefore, it is unfortunately known Therefore, it is unfortunately known that the weather radar is not working at this point. Now, Microsoft just recently made an announcement that they are going to make this data available, and I'm sure that the PMDG developers are going to look into the ability to integrate the weather radar as they can. Now, we have the conventional departure chart here. Also going to search for the RNAV chart, since that is basically what we're flying. That's this one over here, the second one. Going to get rid of the conventional chart there. In the background you can already hear ATC, since we've tuned ourselves into the delivery frequency. But now, before we are going to start with that, we're going to start with the briefing. So, threats for this departure? Well, I do not see any particular threats. In this section we are basically talking about anything that's special for this very flight. And this is standard flight. The airports have flat terrain all around, so there is really no complex taxiing on the departure as well. Right, then we're going to start doing the route check. We're going from Echo Delta Delta Lima to Echo Delta Delta November, and we're the Romeo Yankee Romeo 5 Lima Delta. Departure Romeo 05 right, and our routing is leading us via Ikumic departure to Ikumic, Lima 603 Tasca, Zulu 719 Etulu, Zulu 723 Comip, Tango 193 ATES. And the ground distance for this, hold on, I need to execute. The ground distance for this from the flight plan is 236 miles. We have 267 in here with 2.9 tons remaining. The distance in the FMC is slightly bigger because I've inserted the arrival transition versus the flight plan having just the conventional arrival. 2.9 tons we have, and we need 2.1 tons for a diversion to Stuttgart. Time UTC 1813. Checks with the other side. QNH 1015 reading 120. The MFRA is to be determined. Flight vectors are on minus master and the standby instruments. See, this is why we're doing these briefings. These standby instruments are now set. It's going to be right seat takeoff on runway 05 right with the flaps 5, NADP 2 with a bucket at 1500 feet. That's a specialty in Germany. And we do have a special engine out SID, which is taken straight out to 6 miles from Düsseldorf, left to Lima. NDB climbing 4,000 feet, which is above the highest MSA of 2,600 feet in the north. Is that 2,600? No, it's 2,400. Anyway, 4,000 feet is going to keep us more than safe. Right, for the emergency briefing, we'll start with the captain's part. Above 80 knots, I will only reject for fire or fire warning, engine failure, predictive wind shear warning, aircraft unable or unsafe to fly. If I call stop, I'll simultaneously close the thrust lever and disengage the auto throttle, apply maximum manual braking, verify operation of the RTO auto brakes. I'll manually raise the speed brake lever, bring the aircraft to a stop, and set the park and brake. If you call stop, I will note the brakes on speed and call speed brakes up or speed brakes not up and thrust wheels normal indications. I will call 100 knots, 806 knots and the runway distance remaining. I'll verify your actions and call your emissions. I call auto brake disarm and select flaps 40 when the park and brake has been set and advise ATC of the reject. We then identify the failure and carry out angels as appropriate. If we decide to evacuate, we read into the evacuation checklist. Time permitting, we'll pull the CBR circuit breaker. You grab the lid and then we get out. And if the call before V1 is keep going, there will be no actions below 400 feet except to cancel any warnings and raise the landing over the positive rate. At 400 feet, verify heading select and carry out the memory items. At the MFRA, we will buck up and retract the flaps and schedule. Flaps up, no light, select level change, max continued thrust, engage the automatics, run the non-normal checklist, the normal checklist, and then we will decide on the further course of action. The pushback is fairly easy. It's to the right hand side out here, then we follow the green line onto taxiway Mike. Quite a couple of aircraft over there. So we might be expecting some delay during the taxi. We park down here on Victor 81, so Lima 7. And then from Lima 7 Mike, we'll take the figures for Lima 8 so that we can take the intersection if we need to. And otherwise we might be going to Lima 9. Departure is the Kumik for Zulu departure. That is on a chart over here. 10-3 Papa, effective 25th of March. There's always some useful information in the box here. Transition altitude 5,000 feet. And in the FMC, We have 5001 feet. Remain at tower frequency until passing 2000 and contact Lung radar, frequency 131.355. Now on the ATIS it's at 128.55, so we are going to use that. Since there are also noise abatement procedures, strict adherence within limits of aircraft performance is mandatory. Speed maximum 250 knots below flight level 100, or as by ATC, not applicable within airspace Charlie. However, we will be using 250 knots below level 100 here, unless ATC expressively releases us. Initial climb clearance 5,000 feet, so that's set once, and that's set twice. And now looking at the routing, we climb on the runway track 052. Got 600 feet in here. That's basically 400 feet above the elevation. That's the minimum altitude recommended by Boeing to start maneuvering. Then we're going straight ahead to Delta Lima 050, then 2.4 miles, Delta Lima 058. Then it's a right-hand turn 098 degrees for 10.1 miles to Barmen VOR. Then 095, 8 miles to Anavi. And then it's a right-hand turn 128, 14 miles to Dagom. That's above flight level 150, and then it's 141 degrees, 24.8 miles inbound to Kumek. For the conventional backup here, we can go straight ahead to 6.5 dm Düsseldorf. That was on the previous chart, I remember that one. That's a right-hand turn on 098 inbound to Barmen VOR. That's active and identified on the VOR number 2. Then 095 outbound until 8 dm, and thereafter we will need RNAV equipment, so if we do have an RNAV failure, we are going to contact ATC by the time we're inbound to the Barmen VOR and ask for radar vectors. Do you have any questions on the briefing? Alright, that's no questions. So at this moment, the dispatcher would come in, hand us the load information document, and we would start calculating the performance. Now, for the sake of making this easy, we'll first of all start the APU at the moment the dispatcher leaves the airplane, because it does take a minute or so to spool up. Now, for the sake of making this easy, PMDG implemented a very nice option here. You just click on the 0 fuel weight, and then it's going to put in the stretch pad whatever is actually loaded in the airplane. So we have 50 versus 49.7. That's very close to what we've booked, so that's fine, and that gives us a gross weight of 54.6 tons. We're going to execute that. Now, in the real plane, we would run the Boeing onboard performance tool on our EFBs. Now, I did run this earlier on. Unfortunately, since that software is not available for computer, I cannot show you screenshots of that. So we are going to do the 20k D rate and use 35 degrees for the assumed temperature reduction. That gives us a takeoff thrust of 87.9. Going on to the takeoff page, we're going to use flap 5 for the departure. And the center of gravity, again, we simply click on it to get the data. It gives us a trim of 6.6 units. We'll start trimming here. It does take a while in the 737 until the trim reaches the takeoff settings. Takeoff speeds 123, 123, 128. We're going to insert those if they are within 1 knot of the OPT calculated numbers. And then we're going to dial 128 knots up in here in the MCP, and that basically completes our setup. Now 6.6 units of trim, that's roughly set. In the real airplane, sometimes the trim indicator on the right shows a little bit different than on the left. So don't take this value for the exact number. If it says 6.6, you have something around 6.5 set. That's totally fine. Right, by the time this is finished now, our APU is available. So we are going to turn that on. So now we can remove all the ground equipment around the airplane. Ground power release. We do still have the stairs connected, they can be released as well. And there is nothing more over here. Finally, our parking brake is set, so the chocks can be removed as well. And that basically prepares the airplane for pushback over here. Now in my airline we do have quite some lengthy checklists to read, which we are going to go over in a moment. So bear with me 1 second while I'm getting out the checklist. In real life you just find it on the glare shield, that'd make things so much easier. In flight simulation you have to find all the relative documents, making it a little bit more complex. Again, the checklist proprietary of the airline, therefore I cannot share it with you on my screen. So let's start here. Safety inspection checklist. Surfaces and shocks checked. Maintenance status checked. Battery on. Electric hydraulic pumps on. Landing gear lever down. Ship's library is checked. Before start checklist. IRS mode selectors. Nav. Gear pins. You typically find these down here. That's 1, 2, 3 removed. Probe covers are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 removed. Now in the real airplane you'd count them to actually be in the flight deck in Flight Simulator again. That's one of the small limitations. Light test, that's actually something we haven't done. That's why we're doing these checklists. So we're just going over all those lights to make sure that all the bulbs are working. And that there is nothing being broken in here. Right, the light test is checked. Oxygen tested 100%. Yaw damper on. Nav transfer and display switches, normal and auto. Fuel. Looking over here, that's 4,241 required. We do have 4,500 on board with 4 pumps on. Cabin utility, IV galley power on. Emergency exit lights armed. Fasten belts on. Window heat on. Air condition and pressurization. Pax auto. Bleeds on and set. Pressurization mode selector. Auto. Instruments. Cross-checked. Auto brakes. RTO. Hydraulics. Normal. Speed brake, down detent, and the takeoff config warning is working. Parking brake set, stepped and cutout switches normal. Wheel well fire warning checked. Radius radar and transponder set and standby. Rudder and aileron trims 3 and 0. Takeoff briefing discussed. PA is complete. FMC CDU. We'll open the first page here. Set. And one indicated airspeed box. They're in automatic. Reduced 20k, 35 degrees, 123, 123, 128, set. And make sure to also check it on here on the displays. Stabilizer trim, 6.6, set. Performance weight and balance, signed and sent, phones off, EFB, airplane mode and stilled, flight and windows and cockpit door. Well, we do have some warning over here, which is out now. So flight and windows cockpit door locked, doors closed, passengers. We're using the sign over here just as a reminder in the flight deck. In my airline it's not actually doing anything anymore, since that is all controlled by the airplane's computer nowadays, regardless of the switch position for the no smoking sign. Right, so now we're basically ready to get our IFR clearance. We are going to need to write that down, of course. Let's just recheck the latest ATIS. Information delta still. So here we go. Düsseldorf Delivery, guten Abend, Ryanair 5 Lima Delta, Information Delta, request startup.
Ryanair 5 Delta, this is the series, guten Abend, Information Delta correct. Startup approved, cleared, Nürnberg, fire cooling for new departure, flight at 5000, walk 1000.
Ryanair 5 Lima Delta, startup is approved, cleared Nürnberg via Kumik for Zulu departure, flight plan route, climb 5000 feet, squawk 1000.
Ryanair 5 Lima Delta, is that correct? Contact bound
121.6, Ryanair 5 Lima Delta. Had that frequency pre-selected. I'm going to put it in now. And I do know tower is going to be 118.3, so
holding
just pre-select that as well, making our taxi a little bit easier, reducing the headstand time. Right, so our clearance, 5,000 feet initial climb.
Euro 5 Auto Lima is ready for taxi.
Kumik for Zulu departure, squawk 1000. We'll switch that to alt off, enabling mode Charlie on VATSIM. Now.
Give way to company Airbus A320. Joining Papa 3 on Tango.
So I'm going to use the toolbar pushback from flightsim.to over here, pre-planning the pushback, and then we will be able to push pretty quickly once our ATC is ready. So I'm just going to put something in here that's the most likely expected pushback direction. However, when ATC does give you pushback clearance, be aware that you are actually going to check that you've been cleared for what you've expected. One more thing. Just going to turn the lights on because it starts getting dark. Double click the switches and it's going to turn them all the way for you, making things quite a bit easier than having to scroll all the way. Düsseldorf Count, wunderschönen guten Abend. Ryanair 5 Lima Delta, requesting pushback.
Ryanair 5 Lima Delta, Düsseldorf Count, schönen guten Abend. Pushback approved, facing north.
Pushback approved, facing north, Ryanair 5 Lima Delta. Right, so packs off, APU bleed can go on, it's been 2 minutes, that's the minimum we have to wait now. Anti-collision on. Transponder is in alt off already. Before start checklist below the line. Aircon packs off, anti-collision on, parking brake set, transponder alt off, before start checklist complete. Cockpit to ground. Please confirm all doors and hatches are closed, ground equipment removed and bypass pin is installed. So clear to push, facing north, parking brake set. The ground is going to say release parking brake. Click request pushback on here, parking brake released. Off block 27, clear to push. And here we go, starting the pushback. Now once our engines are beyond the red lines that are marked over here, there's one at the end of the gate as well, we can start our engine, provided that the dispatcher on the headset actually gives us the clear signal. So this is about the distance, so we're going to start engine number 2. Not the timing.
Wings 5 Hotel Lima, contact tower 118.3, goodbye.
Wings 5 Hotel Lima 118.3.
N2, N1. PM is going to call oil pressure once it starts rising.
Düsseldorf Count, Turkish 125 requesting start on pushback.
We check that the valves are actually operating once they're closed. See the fuel flow increasing here slightly before it's going a little bit back. It's just one of the many details I love about this simulation. Start the cutout, monitor number 2. Once the red line here is gone and the numbers are stable, number 2 stable. Just checking temperatures here, it's 22 now. However, I will just close the isolation valve, start the right pack. Now the right engine is running the right pack. Now we can start engine number 1 using bleed air from the APU, while we already get some conditioned air in the cabin. That's called isolated pack operation, and can be found in the supplementary procedure section in the AFCOM if you're interested. So, N2, N1, oil pressure, 25%. Fuel is coming. Going to use a little bit of this time to dim my displays, preparing for the flight in the dark. Start a cutout, monitor 1 with 2, 4, 6, 3. The red line is gone. Engine number 1 is stable. So cockpit to ground. We do have 2 good starts. Clear to disconnect. See you on the left hand side with a pin, and have a good day. Bye bye. See when the right system is changing power. The lights are flickering a little bit. That's normal. And we do wait for the handling agent over here. Give us the clear signal, show us the pin. Then we can do our for taxi procedures. Flight control track. Up, down, left, right, left, right. After start checklist, generators on, APU off, start switches continuous, propede on, anti-ice off, air conditioning, packs auto, bleeds on, isolation valve auto, Flaps, that's 5 required, 5 selected, and a green light.
Requesting fusion.
Step trim, 6.6 units. Set. Start levers idle, attempt, flight controls checked, recall checked, before taxi check is complete.
Pushback is startup approved, facing north, Eurowings 9 Lima.
I keep forgetting my call sign. I can find it here on the progress page. Ryanair 5 Lima Delta, request taxi.
Ryanair 5 Lima Delta, taxi to holding point runway 05 right, via Lima 7, Mike, Lima Niner.
Taxi holding point runway 05 right via Lima 7, Mike, Lima Niner, Ryanair 5 Lima Delta. We are writing that down in the strike pad here. Routing, Lima 7 up here, Mike, Lima Niner, that's basically as we've briefed it. So now that we know the route, first officer, or the pilot monitoring in this case, is going to keep the charts open. But we are familiar with the routing now. Brakes released, config check, and off we go. The 737 needs a little bit of thrust in the region between 30 and 40% to start rolling, and then once it's rolling you can pull the thrust back into idle, and it will slowly start decelerating, but it is going to maintain a fairly decent speed. On aprons, maximum 15 knots, and in turns it's going to be 10 knots. But since these are a little bit wider turns and not that tight, we can take something in between as well, as long as we don't need too much of a steering there. Not too many aircraft at the holding point at the moment, so we will have to start our before takeoff checklist in a moment. Boeing got the, or rather PMDG got the actual Boeing checklist on the control column. My airline is using slightly different ones modified for our operation, so don't be surprised that the checklists I'm running here are a little bit different from what we actually have on the control column in the PMDG 737. Right, so we're clear of the apron, we know where we want to go, so let's do the before takeoff checklist. It's config, checked, flaps, 5, green light, step trim, 6.6 units, set, takeoff briefing. So we are going to review the takeoff briefing here. It's going to be a right to takeoff.
Contact tower 118.3, goodbye.
118.3, Ryanair 5 Lima Delta, bye bye. Pre-select the departure frequency, that's important, because we will not have too much time once we're airborne and we want to minimize our time heads down. So we're not ready for departure yet, we're just going to roll that slowly. I'll call him once we are done, which is going to be in a few moments. So takeoff briefing, it's going to be a right to takeoff, runway 05 right, flaps 5, with the PAX auto, bleeds on, anti-ice off.
Clear to cross 05 right and continue on Mike and contact ground 121.
Takeoff speeds 123, 123, 128. The SID is taking straight out for about 6.5 miles, then it's the right turn out. And we are climbing 5,000 feet. Contact departure when passing 2,000 feet on 128.55. The special EO SID is straight out to 6 miles from Düsseldorf, left to Lima NDB, climbing 4,000 and hold. Right, cabin is secure before takeoff checklist complete. Düsseldorf Tower, guten Abend, Ryanair 5 Lima Delta, ready for departure.
First, Eurowings 540 Lima, wind 040 degrees, 7 knots, runway 05 right, clear for takeoff, goodbye. Runway 540 Lima, wind 05 right, clear for takeoff, further. 3940, wind 040 degrees, 7 knots, runway 05 left, clear to land.
Clear to land 5 left, speed 940.
Ryanair 5 Lima Delta, Düsseldorf Tower, good evening, line up runway 05 right and wait.
Line up runway 05 right and wait, Ryanair 5 Lima Delta. Okay, confirm readback, line up and wait, runway 05 right only. Departure traffic is rolling, the left side is clear. My airline is not using VNAV for departure, so don't be surprised and not to see it engaged here. Cabin crew, seats for departure please. And below the line. MCP, set, transponder,
Keep it rolling, Uranus 279.
TARA, strobe lights on, holding at landing lights. We're going to turn those on once we get the actual takeoff clearance.
Youngs 279 cross runway 05 right, continue taxi right via Mike and contact Düsseldorf ground 121 Dismiss 6, good night.
Crossing runway 05 right, continue via Mike and contact ground on 121 Decimal 6, good night, Youngs 279, bye bye.
Düsseldorf Tower, LTU 1207, good evening.
LTU 1207, Düsseldorf Tower, good evening, wind check 040 degrees 7, that's number 2.
Laut, schon der LTU.
We can see on the TCAS there's somebody landing on the parallel runway. I assume that once he's touched down, we will get our clearance.
Runway 5 Lima Delta, wind 040 degrees 7, that's runway 05 right, clear for takeoff.
Runway 05 right, clear for takeoff, runway 5 Lima Delta, bye bye.
Cheers.
So, landing lights on, before takeoff checklist complete. Timing. And in real life this goes quite a bit faster since we have two pilots, making things a lot easier. Stabilized. Set takeoff thrust.
LTO 1207, expect late landing change.
Checked.
Acknowledge.
3940, expedite, vacate right.
FM.
V1. Rotate.
LTO 1207, wind 040 degrees 7 knots, runway 05 left, clear to land, trip information A, Ryanair, wind 737, departing.
Gear up.
Traffic side, super left, land, Lufthansa 8, LTU 1207.
LNAV.
Super 940, keep it rolling, cross runway 05 right, continue taxi right via Mike and contact Düsseldorf ground 121 Dismiss 6, good night.
Cross,
Command B.
Yeah, confirm cross 05 right, continue taxi right via Mike and contact 121 Decimal 6.
Buck up.
Turn left 140 and contact director 128650, Lufthansa 7 choose.
Flap on.
Speedbird 936, turn right heading 240, descent flight level 70.
Flight heading 240, descend flight level 70, Speedbird 936.
Dankeschön, Abend, die Ehrung ist einfach Lima 5 Befehl.
Flaps up.
First Eurowings 208, climb flight level 170. Flight level 150, confirm Eurowings 208. Eurowings 208, negative, flight level 170. Flight level 170, Eurowings 208.
We have
Eurowings 54 to Lima, good evening,
vertical
Langrada,
speed,
identified, climb unrestricted, flight level 200.
Climb level 200 for Eurowings 5 Lima.
Langrada, schönen guten Abend, Ryanair 5 Lima Delta, passing 3300, climbing 5000, Kumik 4 Zulu departure.
Ryanair 5 Lima Delta, good evening, Langrada, identified, climb via sit, flight level 170.
Climb by set, flight level 170, Ryanair 5 Lima Delta.
Lufthansa 98 Zulu, proceed direct
We
to
do have
Donut.
flaps up, no lights. That's going to be VNAV, set standard, passing flight level 40, climb 170 after takeoff checklist. Air condition and pressurization, that's
48, contact
2.2,
Düsseldorf director 128, Dismiss 650.
set, getting fairly warm, so we're going to turn it down. The airplane's trying to level off now at 5,000, that's going to protect us in case we accidentally turn the MCP altitude up. And we did get cleared, so I forgot to press alt intervent there. Now we continue the climb.
Delta 08 Bravo, contact Düsseldorf Tower 118 Dismiss 3.
Since we're now on the straight leg, have completed the first turn, we can also delete the speed restriction over here. Now to continue the after takeoff checklist, we have air condition and pressurization now at 2.6. And set.
Eurowings 54 to Lima, proceed
Those
direct
are
Boden.
off. Water brakes off, platform normalized, landing gear up and off. Altimeters, that's standard, set twice. We're actually going to set that 3 times now, since we're above the MSA.
Eurowings 208, contact Langen Radar 135.650. 135.650.
Set. After takeoff checklist complete, and we're going to release the
Seabird
cabin to
44, good evening, Langen Radar identified. Information, echo current, expect
we cleared above level 150, so we can go to full climb thrust. I'm going to delete the restriction here. We don't need the taxi.
Walker 1319er, turn right heading 050, descent flight level 70. Lufthansa 908 Zulu, the last time for you, proceed direct Zonep.
Do you have a heading for me, Lufthansa 908 Zulu?
Altimeters,
Lufthansa 908 Zulu,
passing
turn
100,
right heading
climbing 170,
020.
10 checks. The fuel is balanced with 4 pumps on, lights off, APU off, air climb press now 3.6, climbing and set. Fasten belts, auto, recall, checked 1 to 1.5.
Seabird 44, turn right heading 180,
Monitoring on
descent
both
flight level
radios,
100.
and that's the 10 checks complete.
Eurowings 5 Hotel Lima, monitor Unicorn 122.8.
Unicorn 122.8, shutdown.
Ryanair 5 Lima Delta, proceed direct Kumik.
Ryanair 5 Lima Delta, direct Kumik. So that's direct to Kumik. Execute. Once we have checked it on the
Walker
plan
1319,
page,
turn left heading
that's Kumik.
220.
Execute. LNAV available, LNAV. To go, vertical speed. We're already approaching 1 to go, so vertical speed 1000. That's an SOP to prevent nonsense TCAS RAs, which can happen when there is just 20 seconds to a projected
Ryanair 5
impact.
Lima Delta, climb flight level 230.
Climb flight level 230, Ryanair 5 Lima Delta. Set 230, checked. And VNAV. So 230 set once, twice, and 3 times. Also compare it to the optimum. And monitoring 1 to 1.5.
Lufthansa 908 Zulu, contact Amsterdam Radar 125.750.
Vertical speed 3000. Again, this is the so-called 3-2-1 rule. 3000 feet to go, you fly maximum 3000 feet per minute, 2000, 2000, 1000, 1000. But when you're doing this as higher levels, make sure to keep an eye on the thrust to make sure that the thrust required does not
Seabird
actually exceed the
936,
thrust
turn
available.
left heading 140, contact Düsseldorf
2000 to
director
go, 2000 feet a
128.650.
minute.
Left heading 140 and director on 128.650, it's Seabird 936.
And this SLP just avoids TCAS arrays when we are clear to level 230 and the descending airplane is clear to level 240. If we would both approach the level at very high vertical speeds, there could be a potential...
First Ryanair 5 Lima Delta, contact, monitor Unicorn 128.
Monitor 122.8, Ryanair 5 Lima Delta. That's unfortunate. No center controller available in the middle there.
Relax Air calling Langrada, second please.
We'll have to talk to the team in Frankfurt there, who is unfortunately not online. Anyway, I've flown this route quite a couple of times, so I'm fairly familiar with the routings we could expect here. So don't do this at home. I'm just doing it because I do know where the airspace of the Nürnberg approach controller is starting, so I'm going to fly direct to Comip here. But I only know this because on VATSIM I have a rating to control the sector that we are passing through at the moment. Therefore I know which shortcuts you can give and which you can't. If you're flying on VATSIM, don't give yourself directs. Just ask the controller if there are any directs available for you. So now we've leveled up in 230, back in VNAV, and max continuous thrust is selected and verified. Conset. This is a fairly short flight. We have about 132 miles to our top of descent, probably a little bit less even. So we're going to go for AirTIS at flight level 130. I'm going to put that in. That's because the routing in our FMC is a lot longer than it is than what we're actually expecting to fly. If we look at the flight plan page here, scroll through the waypoint, you can see we have this long arm of transition, but our final approach fix is just about here, Upnup. So what I'm going to do now is calculate what a potential shortcut is going to give us. So first of all, at Osnup, we want a speed of 180 knots, which I'm going to put in. Now I'm going to take Osnup and put that behind Delta November 426, but without executing it. And now the FMC is calculating which altitude it would like to have at Delta November 426 in case we do get this shortcut. So it says 5,922 feet over here. So what I'm going to do now, I will erase this again. Now it wants to be in flight level 78. It's at about 6,000 feet, so I'm going to put a restriction here. 6,000 feet or less. And now we're covered in case we do get a shortcut over here and get turned straight in for the ILS Zulu 28 at Nürnberg. Now we only have 86 miles remaining to our top of descent. Now we can already get our destination ATIS, which is done here. Nürnberg information Bravo, expect radar vectors ILS approach 28, runway is in use 28, transition level 60. Let me make sure that's in 60. Departure frequency is not interesting for us, wind 360 at 3, so hardly any wind. CAF OK 14 degrees and QNH 1015 will pre-select that already. Trend NOSIG information Bravo out. So 1015 is in flight level 60 as well. We've preloaded the winds. Now we are going to insert a couple of rings here. For runway 28, that's something special in the 737. You can insert the runway fix in the fix info page. Now we are going to put a ring in 3 times the cruise altitude, that's 69. And a 10-mile ring for high energy approach management. Make sure you're not faster than 200 knots. You have to have flap 1 out at this point, and you should be 3,000 feet above the airfield elevation if you have a 3-degree glide, which we do. We are VMC, so we're going to put a 4-mile ring. That's where we are going to extend our landing gear the latest. We've covered the lags page, so now all that remains to be done is to set up frequency courses and minimums, and then we are set up for the approach. So in here we're going to go on Nürnberg. We have the ATIS to Tango arrival, that's what we're looking for, so I'm going to pin this. Then DUS transitions, we'll have to search a little bit here. DUS 28 on-off transition, that's what we need. And of course the ILS Zulu runway 10, plus the airport chart and the parking chart. Again, Chairperson charts, all copyrights going to Chairperson, provided to the FlightSim community by Navigraph. .277. Let's turn on a little bit light here so that we see something. .109.1, and then for the missed approach we can use Nürnberg VOR here. That's a 115.75, and that's the only one we need there. We're going to turn that on the other side as well. So now I'd hand over control to the other pilot, whom we unfortunately don't have over here. 64 miles to the top of descent, that's a very good point. The very latest actually, to start the approach briefing. Once we've set the minima, which is 1280. Alright, so threats for the arrival. Well, there is going to be quite a little bit of traffic, plus we don't have an ATC for the way for the initial descent into Nürnberg, so we'll have to look for other traffic, maybe even make a Unicom announcement if there is somebody in TCAS around whom we could coordinate ourselves with. Apart from that, there is a lot of traffic, so might expect some delay vectors or might not. They might turn us in quickly. We can expect speed management on the final approach, so we'll be prepared for that. And for the taxi as well. The airport isn't that complex, however, if I do remember right, the apron isn't lit very well, so it's easy to mistake some of those taxiways for one another. Okay, so those are all the threats I see for this arrival. Now, let's actually start with the approach briefing. We do have a speed of 250 knots below flight level 100. Don't do that if you're in the United States. They're using 240 as far as I remember. In Europe it's 250, so that's what we use, since VNAV is doing a very good job at actually keeping the speed where it's supposed to be. Forecast page is filled in. The rings are runway 28, 10 miles and 4 miles since we're in VMC. For the arrival we have the ATIS to Tango arrival. That's ATIS towards DUS. That's 159 degrees, 9.2 miles. From here we're joining the DUS to 8 transition. That's on 172 degrees, 10.7 miles towards Delta November 422, maximum 240 knots, that's in. And then we are going to join the downwind via all those waypoints, 079 degrees, then it's waypoints all the way 423, 424, not in the database since it's just straight. Then we have 425 above flight level 80, that's in. Quickly on the step through those. And on 426, maximum 220 knots, we have the level 60 restriction here that we calculated ourselves. Then 429 is the border. With a right hand turn, 187, 6 miles, waypoint 436. And right again, 277, 4 miles, 435. That's above 5,200 feet due to a little bit of terrain over there. Then same track to Osnub. Now, you do have these center fixes in there from time to time. You can take them out if you want to, since they're not officially part of the procedure, but you don't have to. In my case, I'm going to take it out. So then Osnub says above 4,000 here. Well, if we look in the ILS plate, we'll see that at 4,000 is actually the correct thing. Now we do have the ILS Zulu approach for runway 28, that's on a plate 11-2 from the 14th of January 2022. Frequency is 109.1 are set active on both radios. Final approach tracks 277 are set on both sides. And the elevation is 1046 versus 1050. MSA 3800 around Nürnberg VOR. That's good to remember. And once we started our descent, you can reset this 3 times cruise altitude ring. You don't have to, but it's very good for situational awareness. Okay, the approach starts in 4,000 feet at Osmup. That's what we have in here as well. Then it is a 3-degree glide slope. We have a check altitude at 2.8 miles and 1,930. That's not in the FMC. We'll have to remember to do that ourselves if we are not busy with the landing checklist at that point. We're going all the way down to a minimum of 1,280. That's set on both sides. And in case we have to do a missed approach, climb on radio 277 from November Uniform Bravo to 9 DME. So here we have November Uniform Bravo 277 to the 9 DME point. Then turn right onto radio 313 inbound to NUE, VOR climbing to 6,000. That's DME 313. And then on 131, that's the opposite of 313 since we're talking about radial here. Inbound to November Uniform Bravo, climbing to 6,000 feet. It has flight level 60 in here. So we do have to remember that we are actually climbing to an altitude and not a flight level. So we have to keep the altimeter on the local pressure there. So that's our whole procedure. If we have to go around, press toga, go around flap 15, set go around thrust, raise the landing, go with a positive rate. Tune radius for missed approach at 400 feet, LNAV, flaps 5, 1 up, there is no speed restriction, and once we're level in 6,000 we engage the automatics, run the after takeoff checklist and decide on the further course of action. We require 2.1 tons of fuel for a diversion towards Stuttgart. The weather in Stuttgart is good as well. We've checked that earlier on, we can just check it again down here. So Stuttgart, 080 degrees, 2 knots, CAF OK, 11 degrees, 1015. That's all good. Alright, so 2.1 we need, 2.7 we have, that's 600 kilos extra, that's 15 minutes of extra time that we have available, and that's of course including the whole transition already, so 15 minutes for any possible delay until we have to decide whether we're going to commit towards Nürnberg or divert to Stuttgart. We're using 600 kilos of fuel there, giving us a landing weight of 52.7. 52.7. Now looking at the airport chart, we would do all the performance calculation now on the Boeing OPT in real life. Now we don't have that available here, so I'm just going to use some rules of thumb here. Water brake 3 is typically giving you about 1,600 meters, auto brakes 2,900-ish. So looking at the exit, we have 2,700 meters of runway. There's a scale down here saying that this is 1,000 meters. So looking at this, we're looking at about 1,600 meters to exit delta. So we are going to use flaps 30, auto brakes 3, and we aim to vacate the runway on delta. Then once we've vacated, we are going to taxi via Foxtrot, Mike 2, and then looking at the parking chart here, I think we're usually parking at the terminal. Actually, it's been a while since I've flown to Nürnberg on this particular airline, so I'm not 100% sure where this airline parks. But it's probably going to be one of these stands over here. So that's the approach briefing complete. Do you have any questions? No? Alright, then I'm happy to take back the controls. And descent checklist, please. You do, by the way, have some lights available down here if you need to, that you can actually see the checklist on here if you're using the original Boeing checklist. So, descent checklist as per my airline. Pressurization, landing altitude 1050, anti-ice. Now it's dark outside, but we can't see the stars, so we can be fairly sure that we're flying VMC. So anti-ice is off. Approach brief and fuel is discussed. Indicated airspeed and altitude box are checked and set. Descent checklist complete. In real life we usually keep the flight deck lights as dim as possible to have our eyes adjust to the outside world. Flight simulation is sometimes like a little bit of light. Let's just put the dome light to dim over here, making everything a little bit brighter. In flight you tend to put the seat backwards, so if I just do this over here, I'm actually getting something a little bit further forward. That looks more like what you usually see in cruise. The 737 is a small airplane, so you don't have too much leg room over here, so you're happy for any inch that you can actually get. Well, slowly approaching our top of descent, this would be the moment where we'd request descent with ATC. Since there is no ATC here at the moment, I'm going to pre-select those 13,000 feet over here. 13,000 feet usually is the altitude where you are being transferred from the center controller to the Nürnberg approach controller. Ah, and there we do get the contact me. That's on 129.525. I will just set the altitude back up so that we don't actually start the descent before ATC wants us to. 129.525. And we have information Bravo. Nürnberg, schönen guten Abend, Ryanair 5 Lima Delta, Flight Level 230, inbound COMIP, information Bravo.
Ryanair 5 Lima Delta, München Radar, good evening, identified information Charlie current. Please, when ready, descend to reach flight level 130 at airtest, cleared DUS to 8 transition.
Ryanair 5 Lima Delta, will check information Charlie, when ready, descend to reach flight level 130 at airtest, cleared DUS to 8 transition.
I'm München Radar, good evening, Takeoff 25 now with you.
And there we go, just about on time. So he's cleared us for the DUS to 8 transition. That is basically what we've selected earlier on. We did modify this a little bit, so it no longer reads DUS to 8 in the box over here, but we do remember it is what we have inserted and checked.
Descending to flight level 110 and we are cleared DUS to 8 transition, Takeoff 65. KLM 555, contact director 119.475, bye bye.
Switching to director 119.475, schönen Abend, tschüss.
Ryanair 8 Alpha Tango, proceed direct Delta November 456.
We'll pre-select the director frequency since we do expect that to be for us as well later on. Now, in the descent, gotta put the seats back forward as we gotta see the panel.
Ryanair 22 uniform, proceed direct Odomo.
As we can hear, there is quite a bit of traffic over here, so we have to be careful with the call sign not to confuse it, since there are other Ryanair aircraft here as well, plus some others. My airline does employ a sterile flight deck policy all the way to the top of climb and then all the way from the top of descent, so there is not a lot of talking going on except for the operational things in the climb or in the descent. ATC told us earlier on that there is NUE ATIS available, so we are going to check that quickly. Make sure there's nothing changed, but it's still runway 28. The transition level is still 60, the wind is 1 knot less. KVK 12 degrees 1015.
Easy 4423, climb 7,000 feet on the embargo to Kilo departure.
Easy 4423, München Radar, identified time flight level 130.
Climb flight level 130, easy 4423.
Air Malta 24 Sierra, proceed direct Narus.
Direct to Narus, Malta 24 Sierra.
Now 15 minutes before our landing we want to recycle the seatbelt signs or turn them back on in case they have been on auto or off, so that the cabin crew can prepare the arrival. Expecting a landing at 31, now that is with the extra mileage over here. So let's assume we're going to cut off 3 minutes, that's 27 minus the 15 minutes, giving us 19:12 for the seat belts. Now there is a sec limitation, that's flight level 150, because there might be some maneuvering needed below that to avoid other traffic. Therefore, we're most likely going to turn the seatbelt signs on at 15,000 feet and give the cabin a lot of time to prepare for the arrival. There is a saying with a couple of my friends that a good pilot always keeps the heading bug synchronized. Do note that if you have a track up display, you want to keep it on the actual heading and not on the track, because otherwise when you switch into heading mode, the airplane is going to start to turn.
EZ4423 leaving my airspace, no further ATC, monitor Unicom 122.8, bye bye.
122.8, space weak, EZ4423.
Ryanair 8 Alpha Tango, contact director 119.475, bye bye.
119.475, Ryanair 8 Alpha Tango, bye.
Radar, Scandinavian 4042, descending flat at 110.
Scandinavian 4042, München Radar, good evening. Identified information Charlie current, cleared T-Gear 28 transition.
If you're wondering why the heading back is moving there, I do have a hardware control for that. You can simply assign it to the Microsoft Flight Simulator command for the heading back to increase or decrease, and the PMDG 737 is going to read that and act accordingly. So if you have, for example, the Thrustmaster controls that I just recently got, then you do have a hardware button for that, which you can use with the PMDG 737. We've passed 15,000 feet. Seatbelt signs on. So that now the cabin can start preparing. Want to go? We'll keep the we'll keep the rate of descent greater than 1,000 to make the restriction by AirTAS. Descents in VNAV are actually usually the only situation in which you don't follow the 3-to-1 rule that strictly, because VNAV just doesn't take it into account for its calculations, and you do want to use the advantages of VNAV.
Stop descent flight level 240, we have information Charlie, and repeat the last request please in Lufthansa 68 Papa.
Lufthansa 68 Papa cleared DUS 28 transition.
DUS 28 transition, we are close to that Lufthansa 68 Papa, thanks.
Lufthansa 22 Tango München Radar, good evening, identified information Charlie current, descent
Since we will fly level for a while in 130, we'll just put that in as a new cruise level, and that's going to update our speed to the most economical speed at this level.
Ryanair 5 Lima Delta, descent flight level 80.
Ryanair 5 Lima Delta, descent flight level 80. Is there any shortcut available?
Yeah, Ryanair 5 Lima Delta, proceed direct Delta November 425.
Thank you very much, direct Delta November 425, Ryanair 5 Lima Delta. Right, that's good. So level 80 is set, and we've pressed Alt and Event so that it starts the descent. Now Delta November 425, you can check that on the navigation display. Execute. LNAV available, LNAV.
Anima Wing 450 München Radar, good evening, identified information Charlie current, descent flight level 140, cleared DUS 28 transition.
Send to flight level 140.
If you saw the small, this jerk on the engine displays there. That was just me pulling my hardware thrust levers from the tow-up position. I've had them in from my takeoff back to the idle position for descent. There is an option in the FMC that's going to enable you to override the auto throttle with your hardware control. Have a look into the introduction manual if you're interested into these. I can wholeheartedly recommend you to do so.
Your wings 3 Mile Papa, München Radar, good evening, identified. Kayak 625, descent altitude 6,000 feet, QNH 1015.
Trying to view a little bit here. What you're aiming for is to see a little bit of the top of the glare shield. You want to see the auto brake light, and you want to have a clear view on the primary flight display without the control column obstructing anything there. That's your optimal point of view.
Scandinavian 4042, descent flight level 100.
Descent flight level 100, 4042.
Nürnberg is at 1,000 feet elevation, so you see the airplane is aiming for level 80 Abeam the airport. That's about 7,000 feet above the airport elevation. And if you plan to go in for a 10-mile downwind and final, then that's approximately what you need in the 737. It does not descend as well as you'd like to, and the speed brake is not very effective either. In this situation you'd get about 300 feet per minute more if you'd extend the speed brake all the way to the flight detent.
Papa, descent flight level 150.
Descent flight level 150, Lufthansa 680.
Kayak 625, speed 220 knots.
Reducing 220 knots, back 65.
Altimeters, passing 100, descending 80, 10 checks. The fuel is balanced, 4 pumps on still. Lights on, we don't turn the retracts on, they just cause drag without aiding any benefit at this moment. And the logo lights, not to forget if it's dark. Don't need them in the daylight. Angle of bank 25. We never set it to anything less since we didn't climb above low 100. Aircon press is now at 4.0, and it set the airfield elevation already on the cabin pressure, on the cabin altitude, so the rate of climb is 0 as well. That's set.
Fast notes
on.
Altitude 6,000 feet, QNH 1015.
Ryanair 5 Lima Delta, descent altitude 6,000, QNH 1015. That's 6,000 set altimeter 1015, passing 9,040, descent 6,000, no flags, temp altimeter.
Bye bye.
1.5, 475, bye bye, back 65.
Set. Right, so where were we interrupted for the 10 checks? We've had the fasten belts on. 1 to 1.5 is deselected. Cabin crew, 10 minutes to landing. 10 checks complete.
Scandinavian 4042, speed 220 knots.
Speed 220 knots.
So now that we're clear to an altitude, we're going to perform the first.
Delta, speed 220 knots.
Speed 220 knots, Ryanair 5 Lima Delta.
Ryanair 5 Lima Delta, contact director 119.475, bye bye.
119.475, Ryanair 5 Lima Delta, bye bye. Nürnberg Director, guten Abend, Ryanair 5 Lima Delta.
Ryanair 5 Lima Delta, director, good evening.
Okay, no new instructions. That's fine. So now the first check. Both the frequencies, 109.1, those can be cross-checked with the FMC over here. The rings are around runway 28, 10 miles, 4 miles. Idents, we have India November Uniform Whiskey on both sides, and those do cross-check with the chart over here, India November Uniform Whiskey. Stand by instruments are set, and the course is 277, approach checklist. Altimeters and instruments set, cross-checked, approach aids checked and set, approach checks complete. Ryanair 5 Lima Delta, how many track miles can we expect?
Actually, you can expect 15 track miles, 16 track miles until the ILS.
Roger, Ryanair 5 Lima Delta. Right, so 16 track miles, that means about here maybe, a little bit further out than we've calculated there, so we're going to go vertical speed. Make that 500 feet a minute.
Ryanair 5 Lima Delta, descent altitude 5,000 feet, QNH 1015.
Ryanair 5 Lima Delta, descent 5,000 feet, QNH 1015. Set. 5,000 check, 1015. So now I'm going a little bit above the profile since the air traffic controller told us that we're going to fly a little bit longer than the shortest route we've predicted here that we've based our VNAV upon. We could insert these waypoints manually using the long track waypoints, but I prefer just to do it this way. When ATC turns us in, we can still use the speed brakes if we have to.
Kayak 625 is turning left 010.
For the sake of demonstration, however, if we did something like this, so 429er / minus 7, let's say, put that in here, then you have a new waypoint. Then you take Osnup / minus 3 maybe? Yeah, minus 4 rather. So now you have these new waypoints here, which you could link up like this, and then don't execute it, otherwise the airplane might start turning somewhere where air traffic control doesn't want it to be. Now you'd have to have 5,340 feet at this waypoint. Well, a little bit higher than that, but then again we're also already a little bit slower, which the airplane is actually already aiming for. That's fine, we'll wait for air traffic control to turn us. There's still one more guy over here who's probably going to come in before us.
Kayak 625, descent altitude 4,000 feet.
Descending to 4,000 feet, back here.
We start adapting our eyes to the darkness again.
625,
turn the light off.
Heading 310, cleared ILS, runway 28.
Left 310, cleared ILS, right, back here.
Ryanair 5 Lima Delta, descent altitude 4,000 feet, QNH 1015, turn right heading in 250 degrees.
Ryanair 5 Lima Delta, descent 4,000 feet, QNH 1015, and right heading 220 degrees.
Actually 250 degrees.
Sorry, heading 250 degrees, Ryanair 5 Lima Delta. And there we go. Now we're turning towards the ILS. We'll put Osmup on top. Execute that. Now we do have a clean flight plan. You can see we're a tiny bit above the VNAV path. I'm going to go level change and let the airplane drop down here. But we do still have 19 miles available. The airport is at 1,000 feet, so we're just about 4,500 feet. Making about 15 miles plus 2 miles for the reduction, so actually a little bit low. Can just use vertical speed 1000 to keep us on an optimum profile.
Kayak 625, speed 170 or greater until 6 CME.
Already get a glide slope needle there. We're just going to use vertical speed to steer us towards it.
Until 6 CME,
we could just make our life easy. Need 500 feet a minute to reach Osmup at 4,000, so then we have a continuous descent approach.
Altitude 4,000 feet, cleared ILS 28.
Ryanair 5 Lima Delta, descent 4,000 feet, cleared ILS 28. We do have sensible indications here, meaning that the glide slope and localizer are not jerking around somewhere, which does happen occasionally in real life, so we can arm our approach mode. Banana is right at Osmup, so we are going to do a nice continuous descent approach here. Slowly approaching Osmup, I'm going to start winding the speed back to the up speed. I'll give a little less rate of descent,
Lufthansa 22,
as we still want to perform the continuous descent approach.
Altitude 5,000 feet, QNH 1015.
Terrain noted.
Skinny 4042, continue descent altitude 4,000 feet, turn right heading 250.
Localizer capture.
Continue descent 4,000 feet and right heading 250.
Runway heading 277. Flaps 1. Speed checked.
Ryanair 5 Lima Delta, contact tower 118.3, happy landing.
118.3, Ryanair 5 Lima Delta, bye bye.
Skinny 4042, reduce speed 180 knots indicated.
Reduce speed
118.1, bye bye.
118.1, 38 Wasser,
Fly slope capture. So for the missed approach there we do have 6,000
Kayak
feet.
621, departing is rolling, wind
Set.
360 degrees 2 knots, runway 28, clear to land.
We're using progress page 4 here because that's showing us our cross-track error and vertical deviation compared to the ILS. That just serves as a nice cross-check. Nürnberg Tower, guten Abend, Ryanair 5 Lima Delta, ILS Zulu 28.
Ryanair 5 Lima Delta, number tower, good evening, wind check 360 degrees 2 knots.
Radar, no wind, Westfalia 4381, airborne Nürnberg, climbing flight level 700.
Westfalia 4381, München radar 129er 525 please.
That guy just forgot to switch the frequency and thereby interrupted the controller, but we understood the message. So we can already set the start switch as continuous, do our recall, and on the speed brake.
Westfalia 1051, ready for immediate, next inbound 6 miles out.
Ready for immediate, Westfalia 1051.
Westfalia 1051, line up runway 28 and wait behind.
So now at flap 5 you're
Behind, line up and wait behind.
very slightly losing your speed, and you can keep the engines at
Lima
idle
Delta,
all the way
expect
down.
landing clearance on short final departure between.
Ryanair 5 Lima Delta, roger. So now you keep it nice and quiet, and you do save some fuel and CO2 emissions by using this low drag approach technique. We're reaching the 4 miles, gear down, flap 15,
München radar 129er 525,
and landing
wind
checklist.
360 degrees 2 knots, runway 28,
Start
clear for
switches,
takeoff.
continuous, recall, checked, speed brake, on green light, landing gear down 3 green, auto brakes 3 set, holding the flaps, flap 30. The wind is almost calm, so veer of +5 it will be. Checked. So, flaps, that's 30, 30, green light. So now we're just waiting for the landing lights. You see we're in VMC, the stable gate is 500 feet, and we're well established by about 800 feet radio with everything done. I do want to hand fly a little bit, so I'm just going to turn those lights on so that I don't have to bother with it by the
5
time.
Lima Delta, wind 360 degrees 2 knots, runway 28, clear to land.
Runway 28, clear to land, Ryanair 5 Lima Delta. So this is a good time to disconnect the autopilot then, with everything done. Now just keep following the flight director, that's going to get you exactly where you want to go. And it does happen every now and then that the PAPI is mismatching with the glide slope. If you do have a glide slope, +100 is checked, use that as primary reference.
Scandinavian 4042, number tower, good evening, wind check
Continue.
360 degrees 2 knots, number 2.
Number 2.
Kayak 625, welcome to Nürnberg, contact number ground 118.1, bye bye.
50, 40,
Switching to ground 118.1,
30,
bye bye, have a nice evening.
20,
Thanks, bye.
10,
Bye bye.
Speed brakes up, you heard the sound. Thruster is normal, idler reverse. Again, saving noise and CO2 emissions. 80 knots. 60 knots, there comes the next exit. Manual brakes.
Nürnberg Tower, Lufthansa 1 Delta 7, schönen guten Abend.
Now we're basically braking to vacate that
Lufthansa
runway
1 Delta 7, Nürnberg Tower, good evening.
to reduce the
Call you
minimum
back.
runway occupancy time.
Ryanair 5 Lima Delta, welcome to Nürnberg. Contact number ground 118.1, bye bye.
118.1 Ryanair 5 Lima Delta, bye bye.
Lufthansa 1 Delta
On mic 2 inside.
Lufthansa 257, traffic inside.
Let's get out that
Lufthansa
ground chart.
257, mention traffic.
Vacated Delta.
Position 05, thereafter pushback approved facing east.
I'm trying to keep it rolling slightly,
After traffic,
but if they are talking that much, that might
east
not be possible. Nürnberg, guten Abend, Ryanair 5 Lima Delta, vacated in Delta.
Ryanair 5 Lima Delta, Nürnberg ground, good evening. Taxi to gate 14 via Foxtrot Juliet, mic 3.
Gate 14 via Foxtrot Juliet, Mike 3, Ryanair 5 Lima Delta. Right, so Foxtrot is to the left, and Juliet is the first right, and the Mike 3 is to the left again. You can probably see that better on the parking chart here. Yeah, Foxtrot, Juliet, Mike 3, gate 14 is just at the beginning of the terminal building. We'll just start cleaning up now. Be a little careful with that when you are taxiing at the same time. If you have to, stop the airplane. But once you are used to it, once you're familiar with the procedure, you will normally not have to start stopping there. Small trick, press level change to get your speed down to 0. So that's Juliet over here.
Pushback approved facing east, Lufthansa 8 Fox Lima.
And Mike 3 is the first left. And for the gate, that's as briefed.
Speedbird 925, pushback approved facing east.
Pushback approved facing east.
Real life again if you're flying with 2 pilots. That stuff is done so much faster. But for the flight simulator you have to find your own compromise. So we're looking at a gate at the beginning of the terminal. It's probably going to be this one, the walk-on, walk-off stand there, no jet bridge. That's typical low cost. So we're going to start the APU now. And we're approaching 3 minutes there since landing, so we are going to shut down engine number 2, saving a little bit more fuel. So that's gate 14. Now it's a little bit dark here. I'm going to keep those taxi lights on until we've started the turn. Ideally you'd put the taxi lights and the turn-off lights off by the time you have started the turn onto the gate, but in Flight Simulator sometimes it's a little bit dark. So this is the line we're aiming to stop our nose wheel on. I'm searching for something on the right here that's approximately where the line is, that makes it easier to determine where your nose gear actually is. And here we are. Park brake set. We have 2 blue, 1 red. Engine's dead.
Ground Canadian,
20%. And
Canadian
the
4042 number
full
ground, good
shutdown
evening, taxi to stand
checklist.
15 via Foxtrot, Juliet, Mike 3.
This is the last flight of the day, so
taxi to
we're just
stand
going to shut the
15
airplane
via
down.
Foxtrot, Juliet, Mike 3, Canadian 4242.
Right, fuel pumps, one on, electrical on APU, fast modes off, window heat off, prop heat auto, NEIs off, electric hydraulic pumps off, voice recorder not installed here unfortunately, but that might come at a later update. Air compacts auto, engine bleeds on, APU bleed off, exterior lights set, start switches off, auto brakes off, speed brake down to 10, flaps up, no light, parking brake set, start levers cut off, weather radar is off, transponder 2000 standby, CBR in, cockpit door unlocked, shutdown checklist complete. Alright, that is basically it. Your first flight in the PMDG 737-700 aircraft. Now I'm going to spare you the post-flight duties and the paperwork, so I hope you enjoyed it, and I'm sure that you will be able to enjoy it soon on your own computers. Thank you very much for watching, see you next time.